And I'm very excited to have you all on our webinar today. I'm joined here by a few of my colleagues. We have Anjali, Bryn, Amanda, and Augustina here with us, and they might all say hi and turn on their cameras briefly. But we are all here today to try to help you learn how you can use CommonLit Digital for your virtual learning. We know it's a crazy, uncertain time right now, and we really want to be of as much support and help to you as possible. So throughout this webinar, we're going to have different times when I'm going to stop and see if we have any questions, but during the entire thing, as I'm talking and showing you through the website, these four are going to be helping to answer questions. And speaking of which, if you have any questions whatsoever, please submit those through the Q&A feature. Chat is more for if you're going to introduce yourselves to other people who are attending, or if you have any technology issues, like you can't hear or see me, or what I'm supposed to be sharing with you on my screen, then you can alert us however you wish. But otherwise, chat is just to talk to other attendees, whereas Q&A is to direct questions to us. It's just a lot easier for us to see your questions and address them in the Q&A section. So today's webinar is going to be about an hour long. It might run over a little bit depending on how many questions we're getting, but we will try to get to all of them, even if that means staying a little bit past the hour. But if you do have questions, I'm going to give you some really helpful email addresses. At any other hour of the day, you can direct different questions to different people, or we also have a helpful chat feature on our site that I can point out in a little bit. So this webinar is going to go through the steps of how you first arrive on CommonLit, set up an account, how you navigate our library and find a lesson for your students, and then how that looks from a student's perspective once they have a lesson to work on, and how you grade that lesson, and then all the data that you can gather from it. So we're going over a lot. It's going to be relatively quick, which is why we have so many awesome people on our team helping to answer questions as we go through it all. The CommonLit Digital is really awesome to use because it's great for things like student engagement, which is really important right now when everyone's remote. And we're trying to keep students really interested in what they're learning about. We have great high interest reading passages and other things like related media, which I'll show you. It's also great for really fast grading. So anytime that you assign something, multiple choice questions are going to be automatically graded, which saves a ton of time for you. And there's some also really great things like data analytics when you can see all the data from all of your students and cool graphs and tables that I'll show you. And we also provide digital support tools for struggling readers. So really great things like annotation tool, read aloud, and more. So really excited to show you all of that in just a second. If you're unfamiliar with CommonLit, just a brief little tidbit about us. We are a nonprofit, so everything that you see here today is completely free. There's no catch, so it's not going to change. That's really our mission. And we actually started because our CEO and founder, Michelle Brown, she was a teacher herself down in the Mississippi Delta. And in 2013, she came up with the idea for CommonLit because she worked in a really under-resourced classroom, and she knew how important it was to have access to high quality reading passages and questions for her students. So she wanted to create this resource for teachers everywhere across the country and in the world, so that they could have access to really high quality learning materials. So that's what we are today. Still going strong, still our mission. Most of our staff is former teachers, so we really strive to put everything in our site that we believe teachers really need and could use in their classrooms, no matter who you are or where you are. So we are very excited to dive into our webinar, and I think with that, I'm just going to go ahead and start sharing my screen and dive into CommonLit. Again, if you're just coming on, just a reminder, if you have questions, please direct them to our Q&A. Chat is more just to talk to other attendees, but Q&A is where we can get to you and answer your questions. So I'm going to start sharing my screen now. And I'm actually going to turn my camera off because I want to avoid any connectivity issues. But if there are any problems, please let us know in the chat or Q&A. Okay, so now we are looking at commonlit.org. This is the homepage that you arrived to. And this is where we're going to get started. So I am in the mindset of a teacher right now, and I need to create an account so I can start assigning things to my students. So I'm going to come over here to this create free account button. And we now have the ability for parents to sign up if parents need to create an account for their kids who are now at home. But I'm going to act like a teacher today and select my public school, my zip code here, which brings up all the options for schools in that area. And then you just answer a few more pieces of information about yourself. Once you do these steps, you're going to confirm your account. So I'm going to skip ahead just a little bit and act like I just created my account, but I'll show you what it looks like right now. So on a completely blank account, I have no classes, I have no students, and that actually means that I'm not able to yet assign digital lessons on CommonLit. So I'm going to show you how to create classes near the end of today's webinar, because I just want to jump into CommonLit and show you how to navigate it in the event that maybe you have to leave early. But if you do have questions, we can get to those in the Q&A. Otherwise, I will show you how to create a class near the end of the webinar. So right now, I'm actually just going to dive into, let's say I created a class, and now I want to try to find a lesson for my students. So the more exciting part here is showing you the heart of CommonLit. So I'm going to go back to the home screen now. So we're looking at home screen of CommonLit again. And there are a few different ways of looking through the library, which is why I'm going to focus on that now, because I want to try to tell you about all the different resources and things that you can use to look at all of our reading passages. So I'm just going to head over to the main library page right now. And we have different things like text sets, mini units, novel sets, and a featured content tab, which are all up here at the top of the screen. And I'm going to walk you through all of those. But first, I'm going to start with what we're looking at right now, which is our main library page. So if you already have an idea of a title, something that you want to look for, you can just search for it here in the search bar. You can do things like sort by popularity or Lexile level, and tick off different boxes like your grade bands. If you want to choose from one of our many themes or genres, then you can do that too. And we have over 2,000 reading passages on our site, and 450 plus of those passages are actually Spanish. So here, if you go down to languages, you can actually click over and see our Spanish text right here in the library page. But I'm going to focus on English today. So that's how you would just go through and navigate through the main library. And anytime you see a text on our site, you'll see a square image like this, or a little thumbprint image, and it's going to have the title of that text, the author, and then it'll also have things like Lexile level, the genre, and the grade level of that text. If you're ever really interested in a text, but you know that it's not something you quite want to assign like right now, you can actually add it to a favorite list. So in the bottom right-hand corner, you can see this add favorite button, and it'll add it to a list of your favorite texts right here. When you hover over each thumbprint image, you can see a brief statement, sentence about what this text is. So you can kind of scan through and look at each text and see if it's something that you would be interested in. Now I'm going to walk you through each of these tabs up at the top here. So the first tab is the featured content tab, and this is where we display some of our most popular texts, but also our most topical. So you can see here we have some great groupings for remote learning and also ones that are relevant to what's going on in the world today. These are all really high interest, which is again great for student engagement, and our curriculum team has vetted these lessons to be a fit for administering at home. So if you check out, we have English passages right here, but then we also have Spanish passages, which are sometimes the exact version, and then we also have a few extra Spanish ones. And then we also have this grouping of Powerful Women for Women's History Month, because March is Women's History Month. But we have other groupings like high school, middle school, and elementary school texts. And one thing I always like to point out, if you scroll down a little bit further, we have a lot of different groupings, but one that might be of interest to you All of our reading passages on CommonLit have questions that come along with them, but some of these questions are multiple choice and short answer, and some passages just have the multiple choice questions. So most reading passages have both multiple choice and short answer that automatically get assigned when you assign a text digitally. But if you come down here to passages without short answer questions, these texts are the ones that just have those multiple choice questions. So I like to point that out just in case you're looking for reading passages that just have multiple choice questions. So now I'm going to move on to the themes tab, which could be helpful if you're an English teacher or you're trying to teach to an essential question. This would be a great way to find texts that you're looking for. So there are a bunch of texts that fit around an essential question or theme. So if I scroll down here, I'm checking out all the themes. Maybe you're teaching the book Night by Elie Wiesel in your class, and you want to speak to the theme of morality. You can come here and see a couple of different essential questions we have for this book. And then when you go into the essential question, we have all of our different grade levels and the texts that fall within that grade level with that essential question within that theme. So again, might be really helpful if you're an English teacher or just generally looking for texts that fall under a certain theme. So this next tab up here is our text sets tab, and these cover a range of literary movements, historical periods, and STEM topics. So these are literary and nonfiction lessons that span many grade levels, and each one has a short little intro to the topic, and then you can select the texts that work best for your class. So if you come down, you can see you have lots of different types of text sets. But there are some really cool ones, even though most of them seem to be like time periods. We also have ones like argument, bias, and persuasion. And like I said, we have ones that are more STEM related. If you click through, you can see nature and conservation, and so on. Psychology and the mind, lots of different cool things to check out. If you have a certain topic in mind, you check out our text sets. So the next tab up here is our book pairings or novel sets. So if you're teaching a book in your class, I definitely recommend checking out this tab because we have now 92 different books listed, and our curriculum team has gone through and handpicked different reading passages to go along with that book. So if you're going through and maybe you're teaching the book Animal Farm, you click on this, you can actually see the various passages our team has picked. And then our team has also gone another step and said, this is when and how you can pair the reading passage with the book. So we're really trying to provide as much support as possible. And this is actually great if you're teaching a novel remotely. This is another good way to keep students engaged and make sure they're getting the background knowledge they need to access the plot of the book. It's just overall a great way to enrich a book unit with supplemental readings. So definitely check this out if you're teaching a book in your class. This last tab over here is our units or mini units page. And our pre-made mini units offer a set of texts that focus on an essential question or a specific author, and they're currently for grades 5 through 12. What's cool about these, and I'll click into one just so you can see an example. What's cool about our mini units is that they offer a skills focus, so it goes over the different skills that are covered in this mini unit. And we also have different lessons that aren't anywhere else on CommonLit Digital. So while we do have these digital lessons down here, we also have things like our cross-textual questions, which come with a downloadable. So you have your students read both of these lessons and complete those digital questions, but then you also have this PDF that goes over these questions based on these two reading passages. You can actually, since if we're working remotely right now, you can actually post these PDFs to your LMS, your class webpage, or you can distribute to your class via email. So pretty cool, a different type of feature on CommonLit that it falls within our mini units. And you can see we have lots of different resources here. So an essential question, but also final assessment and alternative assessment and different resources for you as well. Definitely check that out because there is a lot to go over there. All right, so I'm going to pause to see if we want to answer any questions live. I'll hand it over to my colleagues and see if they have anything they want to address. Otherwise, we're going to go on to talk more about how we can find a lesson for our class.
Hi, Aubrey. I think we're actually good right now. Just, keep sending us questions to Q&A, and we are working really hard to answer as quickly as possible. Yeah, you can keep going.
Awesome, thank you so much. So if you joined late, just a reminder, please send any questions that you have to our Q&A feature. The chat box is more just to talk with other attendees or to say hi from wherever you are. We love hearing about all of the teachers from all over the country, or if you're in different countries, that's cool too. And definitely let me know if you ever can't hear me or can't see what I'm sharing, because we want to address that as quickly as possible. So I'm going to continue, and I'm actually going to be in the mindset of a 9th grade English language arts teacher, and I want to find a text that works really well for my students. So I'm going to go ahead and go back to the main library page, and I'm going to start filtering to find a text. So first and foremost, I'm going to stick with my grade level, so I'm just going to start off by clicking that. And let's say my class is working on the theme of social change. So just to make it a little bit easier to find a text, I'm going to check off the social change and revolution box. And I know that I have some struggling readers in my class, so I want to display all these texts in a certain order that'll show lower lexile text first, so I can see those before any of the other ones that are listed. And I think I want to focus on speeches only right now. So just to narrow it down even more, make it a little bit easier for me to go through, I'm going to select the genre of speech. So now I've gone from over 1,500 English reading passages down to 12. So it's much more manageable, much easier to preview these texts. So I'm going to go through, hover over each of these, see what they're all about. But I think for right now, I'm going to go ahead and select I Have a Dream by Martin Luther King Jr., because this is just an amazing and historical piece. It's really powerful and has great figurative language that you can review with your students. So what we're looking at right now is the text page. And before I assign the text to my class, and before I go on to show you the different resources we have that you can use, I want to highlight some of the digital supports real quickly that we have for students, because you can see these on your account and you can use these too. And I'll dive into them a little bit more when I'm on the student account, but I just want to quickly go over them right now. So if you navigate your cursor over to this area, you can see that we do have a read aloud tool. We also have a translate tool that can translate into 27 different languages. And we also have an annotation tool. So to use the annotation tool, you don't have to click this button, but it does let you know how to use it in case you need that little bit of support. So you can, as a teacher, click and drag your cursor and use the annotation tool just as a student would, and you would type your note and hit done. You can go back and edit it and delete it just as a student could. And you can also highlight in any of the 6 colors that students can also highlight in. But just a quick note that you on the teacher account, while you can use the annotation tool, these notes and annotations, if you were to navigate away and come back, they don't save on the teacher account. So they do save for students. They automatically start saving as soon as they're typing. But as a teacher, you can just play around with it, but it won't save your annotations. I'm going to show you as a student what it looks like to use this tool, and then how you as a teacher can view your students' annotations and actually provide feedback on them. But I just wanted to give you a quick overview of this tool, and I'll show you a little bit more later. So now I want to direct your attention to the top tabs up here, and these are our teacher and parent facing lesson planning materials. So the first tab I want to walk you through is this paired text tab. And this is where you can find passages that our curriculum writers have handpicked to pair with the main text that you're looking at, which in this case is the I Have a Dream text. So under each text is just a little explanation and some questions to help students make connections across text. So for example, if you were to look at this one piece by Jason Miller, this would be a great text that you could pair with I Have a Dream to expand your students' learning and get them thinking across text. So your students can gain a better understanding maybe behind why King chose the words he did in his speech. So really interesting and helpful for you if you really want to expand your students' learning. The next tab up here is our related media tab. And this is what I kind of referred to earlier as a great way you can use CommonLit Digital for student engagement. So not only do we have really high interest texts that you can use, but also we provide a video for every single lesson on our site. And we often have 2 to 3 videos. So you can choose between the videos. Maybe you have one that works better for your students than another. It's up to you. But what's really great for these is it increases student engagement and makes them really interested in what they're learning about. So for remote learning in particular, you could use your LMS, your class webpage, or email to share these videos with your students and tell them to watch it before or after they complete a lesson. So not only is it really interesting for them to watch, but it's also just another way to make them feel more connected to the text and also to you and your class. Since everyone's working separately, but we're all watching the same video, we're all kind of connecting in a certain way to the text that we're reading. So we do have various videos, and especially with the speeches on our site, we try to provide a video of the writer themselves delivering the speech whenever we can. So it'd be a really powerful, interesting video for the students to watch for this speech. Next tab up here is our answer key, and that's where you can find the answers to our assessment questions. Those are the ones that get automatically assigned to students when you assign a lesson digitally. I will go over the different types of questions in just a second, but that's where you would go for those answers. And last but not least, we have our parent guide. And this is something you can share with students' families to keep them up to date on what your students are reading in class. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the main text page. And I'm going to start previewing my questions. So we have 3 different types of questions, and you can start previewing them over in this section over here. So the first type are guiding questions, and this is part of our guided reading mode. So I want to explain this a little bit. This is a support for struggling readers. These questions are scaffolded comprehension questions that support student understanding of the text. It's actually guided reading mode is kind of a tool that you can turn on for your students when you're assigning a text, and you can decide whether you want to assign it to the entire class or just to individual students who you think could use a little bit of extra support. I'll show you how to do that when we're assigning the lesson, but the best part of these questions is that these questions don't go against a student's grade, but we do collect data and you can have that data to dig into. So we report how many attempts it takes a student to get each question right before they move on. So they actually have to get the question right before they can move on and continue reading the text, which is a great way to assess student understanding and inform further intervention for you. So if you want to preview these questions, they're actually these little bubbles throughout the text. So you can click on them, and you see the question and the answers over here. And to figure out what the answer is, just as a student would, you would go through and try to answer them, and then you'd see the correct answer. Our assessment questions are the second type of question we offer. And like I said before, these ones get automatically assigned to students when you assign a lesson digitally. And the answers for these questions, like I said, are up on the answer key tab right here. So these questions are more rigorous, they're standards aligned, and the multiple choice questions get automatically graded. There are short answer questions on the majority of the passages on our site, so those would be the only things that you have to grade, and you can provide feedback to your students on their responses, which during this time of remote learning is another good way of you connecting with your students. So I'll show you how you can look at student responses for this and grade them in a little bit, but to preview each of these questions, you can click through, and you can also see the standard for each question up here if you hover over that little blue box. All right, and the best thing about these standards actually is that once students complete an assigned text and you go to grade their short answer responses, you'll actually get to see standards-based data on the student performance page. So when I go over all the data that you gather and can review on the teacher account, I'll show you a table that you can look at that shows a drill down of the different standards and how your students are doing according to each standard. So that's a pretty cool, relatively new enhancement for us. So our last type of question is the discussion question. And students can't see the discussion question. So these are just for you, but they're great prompts for student discussion. And during remote learning, you can actually use these discussion questions as the second part of an annotation task. So I'll explain how to do that shortly, but these are yet another great way to increase student engagement. Okay, so let's say that I've gone through and I've previewed all of my questions. I really like what I'm seeing here, and I want to assign this text. So I'm going to come up here to the left-hand side and click the Assign Text button. And this is the assignment screen. Now I have to decide if I want to assign this text to my entire class, multiple classes, or even just a small group of students or one student. But today I'm going to go ahead and select just my first block, 9th grade English class. And the next thing you see here is our customizable annotation task. So this is a really key feature that can allow you to personalize the lesson for your students, which is great for remote learning right now. So you can see our standard annotation tasks that we offer for this lesson, which, you know, I like, it's good, but I also, like I was saying, want to personalize this for my students and maybe want to add to this as well and have them pick out things in particular. So this would be a really great way to communicate specific directions to your students. So maybe you want to have your students highlight figurative language in the color green, for instance. And then maybe you want to have them respond to certain questions in an annotation at the end of the text. So maybe you can ask them to say, you know, respond to these questions at the end of the text, and then you can list out the different questions. So I have an annotation task that I want to paste right here. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm copying my task that I want to put in here. I'm going to remove this one and just paste in the example I have. So again, this is a great way to really connect with your students. So you can directly address them and say, hi, I miss seeing you every day, but let's continue our unit on social change. And then, like I was saying, specifically ask them to highlight things in a certain color. And then at the end of the text, have them respond to these questions. And then I'll show you soon, I'm going to show you how you can actually give them direct feedback on each of their annotations, but you can even let them know that that's what you're going to be doing and they can see your responses when you release their scores. So that's just another good way of connecting with your students is by using this customizable annotation task. The next thing you can decide is whether or not you want to turn on those guiding questions. So enabling that guided reading mode will provide those guiding questions for your students. And here, if I toggle it on, I then also get to decide if I want all of my students to get those comprehension questions or if I just want certain students. So as I mentioned before, these are more for struggling readers. It's providing extra support for your struggling readers. So I'm going to select just those students who I believe could use or benefit from this tool. Okay, and then another really key feature that I'll point out is our customizable start date. So this is relatively new for us as well, which is good timing, just in case you need to plan for your next few weeks of remote learning. You can actually schedule lessons in advance by using this new start date feature. So anytime that you want to plan a lesson, you can just come down here and choose when you want this lesson to start. So maybe I want my students to work on it the week of April 6th. and then you can have them complete that lesson by that following Friday. And then your students actually won't be able to see this lesson, won't be able to do anything with it until April 6th. But it just allows you to kind of get ahead of the game and do your planning. And yeah, that's a new feature for us. So if that's something that you're really excited about, feel free to let us know. Which actually is a good reminder that if you ever have some feedback for us, you can actually send it to feedback@commonlit.org. So I'll put that in the chat right now, feedback@commonlit.org. We have a few new helpful features, but we would love to hear from you on any feature on our site whatsoever. So definitely let us know what you think. Okay, so let's say that I've answered everything here, I've done everything I need to do. I'm going to go ahead and assign my text. So there you go. You just assigned your first CommonLit Digital text. So all your students have just received it. And I'm going to pause here to see if we have any questions, but I want to let you know first that we do have an integration with Google Classroom that allows you to post your assignments directly to your Google Classroom, and we even pre-fill assignment information for teachers. You can also choose to sync scores with your Google Classroom gradebook. So you can decide to do that right now with this window that pops up, or if you exit out of the screen and come back to it later, you can do that through the assignments page. So even if you exit out of this now and forget to do it, you can always come back and choose to do that later. All right, I'm gonna pause right there and get a quick sip of water, but if I have any questions that I can address right here, if any of my colleagues wanna bring any questions up, if there are recurring questions in Q&A, please feel free to address those now.
One question we're seeing come up quite a bit is how to set up classes on Google Classroom or how to get students set up on CommonLit. Aubrey will be covering that towards the end of the presentation, so please hold off on those questions for now. We promise we'll get to those before the end of the day.
Awesome, thank you, Bryn. Yeah, so we will be going over how the 3 different ways that you can create a class on CommonLit, but we wanted to show you all of this right now because we know that some of you might not be able to stay throughout the entire webinar, which is another thing I want to bring up is if you can't see this entire webinar, don't worry, we are recording it and we will be sending out a link to the recording later today or tomorrow in a follow-up email. That follow-up email is going to be going to whatever email you registered for the webinar with. So if you don't receive it, definitely reach out and let us know. But just so you know, it's going to go to that email that you used to register for this webinar, and it's going to include different resources that we talk about today, as well as the recording for the webinar. We don't do a certificate of attendance either, but that email only goes to those who attend the webinar, so you can kind of use that as your proof of attendance if needed. All right, so I am going to continue. I know we just went over how to assign, how to create an assignment, how to then assign it to your students. So the next thing I want to do is actually start doing that assignment as a student. So I'm going to switch my screen to a student account, and then I'll show you what it looks like from a student's perspective. But I actually just realized that we made the start date of our assignment for April 6th. So if I switch over to the student account right now, I wouldn't be able to see it. So I'm just going to go back and edit that real fast so that we can actually view the assignment. So if I go to my assignments page, as I was mentioning before, this is actually where you can go back to that share assignment window. So if you are using Google Classroom and you forgot to post it to your Google Classroom, this is where you can go back and do it. Or if I want to edit the start date, so right now it's April 6th, I can come to this little pencil button, and that's where you can edit the start date. So I'm going to change it to be today so that we can actually start working on it, and then you can change your due date as well. So I'll make it for this Friday. All right, so now it's been updated, and I'm going to switch my screen now to the student account so that you can see what this lesson looks like from a student's perspective. So I'm going to share. Okay. So now we're looking at CommonLit from a student's perspective. The student is Sean. So if you recall when I was assigning this I Have a Dream lesson, Sean was actually one of those students who received guided reading mode. So he's going to have those extra comprehension questions as he's reading his text. If you see over here on the right-hand side, there are little red notification bubbles next to this alarm bell, and that's letting students know that they have something to work on. So looks like Sean has a few different things, but I'm going to come down to the assignment that I just assigned to him. So this window that pops up is the student intro, and this is just a brief introduction into what this text is, maybe who the author is, and then it also includes your annotation task. So you can see the customized annotation task that I shared with my students. So now all the students know that they have to highlight figurative language in green and respond to certain questions at the end of the text in an annotation. And then they also know that I'm going to provide feedback on their annotations when I release the scores next week. So right now, I'm going to click Got It. And I'm actually going to show you those tools that I mentioned that struggling readers can use when they're completing an assignment. So at the very basic level, we allow students to change the font size of the text so they can make it bigger or smaller, depending on what works best for them. And now let's say that Sean struggles with both fluency and comprehension. Well, luckily with this digital assignment, he has access to our Read Aloud and Translate tools. So if he comes over here, he can click on Read Aloud, which will bring up these speaker icons next to each section of text. When he clicks on the speaker icon, it'll play out loud.
I Have a Dream by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.
So it's going to continue reading through until Sean hits pause or hits stop. And anytime it gets through an entire section of text, if Sean were to navigate away from this page and come back, Read Aloud actually remembers the last place where you left off. So you don't have to go through and start through the entire section of text again. It's going to remember where you left off so he can just pick up right where it ended. But if he's all done with Read Aloud, then he can click Hide Read Aloud. And then if he wants to use our Translate tool, it similarly will just, if you click on this tool right here, it'll bring up these globe icons next to each section of text. And when you click on the icon, it brings up the translation of that text right next to it. So right now, the default language is set to Spanish, but if Sean spoke a different language, then he can choose from any of the 26 languages that we have in our Translate tool right now. And just like for Read Aloud, if he wants to hide away that tool, if he's done using it, then he can click it again. And we also have this annotation tool that students can use, which is how he's going to be responding to that annotation task that we set for him. So like I pointed out before, this isn't something that you need to hit the button for, but if students aren't aware that this tool exists, they can click this button and it'll bring up a little box that tells you how to use it. Otherwise, students can just go ahead and start using it whenever they need to. So they can click and drag their cursor, and it brings up the option for them to start typing notes. Now notice on the student account, it starts automatically saving as I'm typing. So if the computer were to shut down or for whatever reason, you have to get out of this program, navigate away from this page, whatever it is, his note is going to be saved and it's going to be there when he comes back. So that's even before I hit done, it's going to be saved, which is really helpful for students if they forget to hit done or if anything else happens. And then the students can also edit or remove their annotation. And like I said, you're going to be able to see these notes on the teacher account, so I'll show you what that looks like later on. But then Sean can also highlight in the colors that he needs to. So if it's figurative language, he can highlight in green and so on. So now that I know all the tools that I can use, now I'm going to start reading the text and looking over the questions I have to answer. So the first question I have is a guiding question, which means it's part of that guided reading mode that you turned on for Sean. So as I start reading, I come to the first question at the end of this first section of text. you'll notice that the rest of the text is completely blurred out. So Sean can't even complete reading, and Sean can't go on to the assessment questions, which are the graded questions, until he has answered all 7 guiding questions correctly. So Sean comes to the first question and he gets it wrong, and he gets it wrong again and again. He has to answer it correctly until this blurred text then becomes clear and he can continue on. So I'm going to finally answer this correctly, and you'll see it unlocks this next section and allows me to move on and continue answering all of these questions. So I'm just going to click through, answer questions, do my best, and still each time I still can't move on to the assessment questions. So keep that in mind, because we really want to set up students for success and make sure that they don't go into the assessment questions with basic misinterpretations. So this is just a reminder, these are basic comprehension questions just to ensure that struggling readers have a basic understanding of the text before they go on to complete the graded assessment questions. So now I'm going to answer my last question here. And this button will become a full teal color, which now makes it clickable. And students can also see this window right here. So guiding questions are somewhat gamified in that we provide these stars for students to let them know how many attempts it took them to get a question right. So it really motivates them to do better even next time and try to get all full stars for their guiding questions. But then it prompts them to move on to the assessment questions. One last thing I want to say about guiding questions is that it can be especially helpful for remote learning right now, because we know that maybe you're unable to monitor your students as they complete a lesson in real time. So you're not looking over their shoulder and making sure they're totally understanding things as they're reading through the text. So this provides just an extra layer of support to your students who you might normally focus on supporting during class. But now Sean has answered all of his guiding questions, and he's going to go on to the graded assessment questions, which again, these ones are more rigorous, they are standards aligned, and unlike the guiding questions, you can actually skip through and answer them out of order. So if I were to answer this question, but maybe I don't know the answer to this one, I'm going to go ahead and skip ahead. Let's say I answer this one. All right, cool. Getting closer to the end. Now I have the short answer questions. So I'm going to say MLK was blah, blah, blah. Not a great answer, but maybe Sean's rushing through. We'll get to how you can grade that in a second. Again, answers with some sort of response and goes on. Well, we provide a reminder for students because remember, Sean forgot, or he skipped over the second question. So we want to make sure we're really setting students up for success, and we want to remind them when they still have work to do. So you can see all of these questions that were answered are in full teal, and then this light gray one is the one I have to go back to. So I'm going to go back to this question. And then whenever there is a quote in a question or in an answer, you can see in parentheses we provide the paragraph number. Students can actually click on that and it drags them down directly to where that quote is in the text. So it just saves them a little bit of time. It might help them if students struggle with locating quotes. It is just an easy way of taking them directly to where that is. So let's say I answer that, I go through, review all of my answers again, get through to the last one, and now I'm ready to submit. So I'm going to go ahead and click submit. And it just provides me yet another reminder that I should probably review all of my answers just in case I haven't. And I'm going to say that I have, and I'm ready to go, and click submit. All right, so now I can see on the student account all of the assignments that I have left to do, as well as the ones that are still being graded by the teacher. So I just submitted this one. And then I can see all of the ones I've completed, and you can click on it and actually view the score for your assignment. So if you get to go through and see how you did on each one, you can see the teacher's comment on your short answer response. and then you can see your final score at the end. Now, if I go back, I'm going to quickly show you, because we've gotten some questions on this before. Students can also look at their performance. So if you go to the My Performance tab, they can see all the data from all of their assignments they've completed as well. So you get to see a whole lot of information across all of your classes for all of your students at a zoomed out and zoomed in version, and students can see the data for their assignments too. Okay, so I'm going to pause to see if we have any questions we're going to answer live about the student experience. If there are any recurring questions, Augustina, Amanda, Anjali, Bryn, they're my colleagues who are on who've been answering your questions, but I'll leave it to them to see if there's anything we want to answer live right now. Okay, I think they're busy typing away because I know we have a bunch of people online right now, which is awesome. So I appreciate everybody's patience and support as we are going through and answering all of your questions. So thanks for your understanding.
I actually have one. That I was just looking through the chat to see if some folks put some questions there by accident, and I'm seeing some discussion about unsubmitting or letting a student go back and submit an assignment again. You can do that. There will be an option on an assignment report to unsubmit for a student, which would kind of like reopen that assignment, and students' answers from before would be retained, but they would not see the correct answer, and you can give them that opportunity to go back and resubmit their work. I can drop in a support article from our like fantastic FAQ support page that can help you and walk you through that process in the chat right now. And that's all.
Cool, thank you, Amanda. Yeah, so just another reminder, if you have any questions, please put those in the Q&A section. It's just easier for us to see and answer directly in there. And then anything that's you talking with other attendees, or if you have any technical issues, you can definitely put that in the chat. But any other questions, please direct them to my colleagues in the Q&A section. And I will be showing you in just a second how you can actually unsubmit assignments. But we do have a really awesome resource. Our FAQ page has a ton of support articles that I can show you how to access. And I'll show you a few other things that you can do if you have questions now, or if you want to answer questions later, maybe at night if you're browsing CommonLit at night and have a question. So with that, I'm going to switch back over to the teacher account. And now that I have a student submission of an assignment, I actually am going to go ahead and go to that assignment and start grading. So if I were to refresh my page, just as a student gets a little notification when they have something to do, teachers also get notifications when they have something to do. So it lets me know that I have something to grade, which you can see on the assignments page here too. You have one short answer response that you need to grade so far. So I'm just going to go straight to that assignment grading page. So it goes straight down to what you actually need to work on, but I'll scroll back up to show you a little bit more about this grading page. So for this grading page, you can see the text here on the left-hand side. You can see all of the multiple choice questions that were automatically graded for you. So you actually don't need to do anything here, but just for your own knowledge and awareness, you can see the questions, and then you can see a breakdown of student responses. So right now, only one student has submitted their assignment. So there's only Sean's response for this question. But if there were multiple submissions, you could see who answered which way, and then you can see what the right answer was up here. As you go through, you'll see these little red notification bubbles, which again are the things that you need to work on, and the little pencils here indicate that these are the short answer questions. So I'm just going to go ahead and skip down to those. So you can see the question at the very top here, as well as a pretty detailed exemplary response we provide for you in case you want to refer to that when you're grading student responses. Along that vein, we're going to check out this red play button up here. So we have this red play button on various aspects or various pages of our site. So if you ever see this button, whatever it's located next to is actually what it's talking about. So if you were to click on this button right here, you can see it's next to the short answer. And if you click on that button, it's going to show you how you can grade short answer responses. So it takes you to a video on our YouTube page, and it'll walk you through how you can grade short answer responses on CommonLit Digital. And this window also shows you a rubric that you can download to provide a little bit more support. So if you need that support, you can watch that video, or you can scroll down and begin grading. So this is kind of like a stack of papers. Right now we only have, like I said, one submission, but if you were to have all your students' submissions, there would just be a stack of their short answers for you to grade. So the first one here is from Sean, and you can read Sean's response. And if you click assign score, you can assign him a score on a scale of 0 to 4 and provide optional feedback. When you're grading, you can also hide names so you can blur them out just in case you want to remove any potential bias when you're grading their responses. But I know this is Sean because he's the only one who has responded so far. So I'm going to go ahead and assign him a score. So maybe he did okay, but not that great, and I want to provide some feedback to him. So maybe you can say, Sean, please provide more detail. And then you can even come up here to the exemplary response. And if you want to provide your student with an example of something they should be doing, something that they can mimic the next time they're going to write a short answer, you can come up here and copy and paste the example directly into your feedback to them. An example of this would be something like, and then you can just copy and paste it right into the box. And then when you're done, hit save and next, and it takes you to the next thing that you have to grade, which is question number 8 for Sean. So again, question up here, the exemplary response, and Sean's response. He didn't do so well on this one either, so you can provide another piece of feedback to him, copy and paste whatever you would like, and then provide your feedback. Now that I'm all done grading, because I don't have any other students who have submitted their responses, you saw this little button was dancing around, and that's because it's nudging you to take a look at the assignment report. The assignment report is going to be the report of all the data that you've gathered from the submissions so far. So if I were to go to the assignment report, it's a little bit boring right now because there's only one submission. So I'll show you what it looks like on another assignment that has more data. But this is where you can see the guiding questions and how students responded on them, as well as the assessment questions. And then once you have all of your students' submissions, this is where you would also choose to release the scores to your students so they can see not only their scores, but also all the feedback that you're providing to them. Also, this is where you can see, if you come over to the left-hand side, student annotations. So if you click on student annotations, it'll take you to the page where you can drill down for each student and see the annotations on their assignment. So it looks like the text, it shows you Sean's annotation, and this is what you can click on to then provide your feedback on the annotation. So I can type in my notes, response to notes, hit reply, and Sean will be able to see that comment when he goes to view his score and his lesson. All right, so I'm going to check out, I'm going to go back to an assignment that has some more interesting data to look at. This assignment is going to show you some more interesting annotations. So while my examples were not the most applicable to the actual lesson and what students might be saying and how you'd be responding, this will show you a better example of actual annotations. So this is a different submission of Sean's. Maybe Sean just wrote that this was interesting, so he's making a note, but it's not a very detailed note. You can type something like, "Why is that interesting, Sean? Please provide more detail." And then Sean has some more highlights here, so he did a better job of highlighting things. and you're going to make notes on all of the annotations, which again, during remote learning is just a really good way of connecting with your students and letting them know that you're there for them and that you're paying attention and really still trying to help them improve in all that they're doing. All right, I'm going to go back to my assignments page, and now we're going to look at an assignment that has more student submissions and more data to look at. So on the assignments page, it's broken down by assignment status as well as your classes. So I want to check out one that's been completed, and it's just for my first block class. So if I scroll down here, I'm going to show you an example of an assignment that has guided reading mode enabled. So I'll check out the assignment report. And this one has numerous submissions, and this is where you can see the class average, achievement by question type, student performance groupings, high and low scores, and like I showed you before, you can see the guiding questions. So if you hover over each one, you can see what the question is, what the right answer was. It's color coded, so you can see just at a glance how students did on each question and maybe where you would want to step in. So you can see students really struggled with question number 1, so you can take a look at what that question was, and maybe it provides you insight into where they might be struggling. And if you go down, you can see their assessment results. So again, this is the section, these are the questions that were actually graded. And again, it's color coded. You can hover over each question. You see which standard is for each question, and you can see their short answers for each one as well. As Amanda mentioned before, this is where you can unsubmit an assignment for one of your students, multiple, or all of them. So if you think that they didn't do so well, but that they could do better, you can give them another chance to respond to questions differently. So that's where you do this. And if you scroll back up to the top, these tabs up here, some of them look familiar, but the student performance tab is one where you can see even more data. So this can show you all of your classes at a glance, and you can see the individual classes up here, but how all of your classes are doing on literary versus informational text, and then how they're doing on all of their assignments, as well as a breakdown of how they're doing according to standard. If you want to see this information for one class, then you just click on one of the classes. And it's really all similar information, but just for that one class. So you can see an overall performance snapshot, achievement question by question type, and again, a breakdown of performance by assignment for each student and how they're doing according to standard. I'll point out that anytime you see a table or data, there's often the ability to download that information. So here you can download this information to a CSV file. So maybe if you have an external gradebook, you can download the CSV file and then upload it to your external gradebook to use it elsewhere. Now I actually am interested in seeing how this looks at an individual level. So if I'm looking at, let's take a look at Angela. So Angela is doing fairly well. You can see her responses, and you can also see feedback that you've provided to her on her short answer responses if you click on this button. And you can continue through and look through all of them for her assignments. And then if you scroll down to the bottom, this is where you can see how she is doing. So just Angela according to each standard. So if you drill down, you want to look to see how she's doing and how she's answering on the vocab and language questions. You can see her overall average on those. And just like there's the ability to download data to a CSV file or anywhere externally, you can download this entire report, this entire student performance report for Angela. So maybe if you wanted to share that with a parent during a parent-teacher conference, or in this case, during remote learning, you want to share that with them online in an email, you can do that as well. All right, I know that was, again, a lot of information, so I'm going to see if we have any questions about anything I just went over. Right after we do this, I'm going to quickly go through how you can create a class on CommonLit. So there are a few different ways, and I'll go over that briefly, and then continue or finish up by showing you some resources that you can use. But I'm going to pause here to see if any of my colleagues have any questions they want to address to the broader group.
Hey, Bryn here. I think everyone, I think we have most of the questions answered. I think the remaining questions are mostly about creating classes. So I think we're ready to move forward.
All right, thank you very much, Bryn. So we are going to power through. I know that it's now at the end or top of the hour, I guess. So I'm going to try to make this as brief as possible, but please feel free to continue sending over your questions. And if we still have questions by the time I'm done showing you things on this webinar, we will hang around and make sure that we answer everything. Okay, so going back to the very beginning, when I was brand new to CommonLit and needed to set up a class, I'm going to show you how you can do that. I'm actually going to go back to that original screen now. So I'm taking a look at my blank account that doesn't have a class, doesn't have any students, or anything. So before you can even assign a lesson digitally, you need to have students on CommonLit, which means you need to have a class. And like I said, there are 3 different ways that you can create a class on CommonLit. 2 ways take advantage of some awesome integrations we have. So if you use Google Classroom or Clever, I'll explain some advantages of those 2 integrations. And then I'll go ahead and show you the 3rd way, which is the old-fashioned manual way of creating a class once I explain the integrations in a second. So for Google Classroom, you can sign all of your students up, you can use single sign-on, and you can post assignments to your Google Classroom. If you have Clever, you can sign all of your students up in one fell swoop. You can also use single sign-on, and your classes will update whenever a student is added or removed from your class. So both of those integrations are really awesome, really trying to make this process an experience for you as seamless as possible. So definitely look into those if you use either Google Classroom or Clever. For Clever, if your district is already set up with Clever for CommonLit, then all you need to do is log into CommonLit from your Clever dashboard, or you can hit the login from Clever button on our login page to connect your account to Clever and add all of your Clever classes. If your school or district isn't already set up with Clever for CommonLit, it's a pretty simple process, but we would just need your school admin and district admin to reach out to our partnerships team, and we would get that set up for them. So that's a helpful email address for you to know if you're an admin watching or if you want your admin to reach out to us to get this integration all set up. It's partnerships@commonlit.org. So I just put that in the chat. If you are a teacher and you're interested in telling your school or district admins more about this integration, then I'm going to put a blog post link in the chat. I just shared it with everyone. And that kind of just goes over the partnership we have with Clever and what you can take advantage of because of this integration. Okay, so those are the 2 integrations we have, but if you don't use either of those, that's totally fine. The 3rd way of setting up a class is also really easy, and I'll show you how to do that right now. So you're going to go ahead and hit this Create a Class button. Fairly straightforward to tell you what to do next. And again, hit Create a New Class. We're going to do Create a New Class manually. And you'll select the school that your class is in. Maybe this is for Period 1 English, so you would make a class for every block or every period that you have. It's going to be for 9th grade, and I'm an English teacher. So have all of that filled out. I'm going to go ahead and create my class. So now the next step is to add students to my class because I have no students at the moment. So as you can see, every time you create a class manually, it generates this unique class code, and that's the code that students are going to use to join your class. If you hit this button over here, it provides more of an explanation. So for students who are brand new to CommonLit, they don't have an account, they don't have any other teachers who use CommonLit, they would go to this link right here, commonlit.org/en/enroll, and they would use this unique code for your class specifically. If they're brand new to CommonLit, we also provide this handout, so you can share this with them via your LMS or webpage, or you can email it to them or their parents and have them follow the few steps that are required to set up an account. Very easy, very straightforward, but just providing a little bit more of a breakdown so they can follow along the steps. And again, just make sure that they know this is the code for your class and what they need to sign up. For students to sign up, just so you know, they don't need to use their email addresses. So if that's a concern to you, don't worry. Teachers use email addresses to sign up for an account, but students do not need to. If you want to go back and edit your class, you can also do that. You can add students by also coming over here to the options button, and you can archive your class, and that'll store it away in this section here. So maybe next year you don't have this class and you don't want to see it on your manage classes page anymore, then you can store it away in your archived classes section. All right, I know, again, that was a lot of information, but I'm going to pause to see if we have questions about that or anything else that we want to answer live. Otherwise, like I said, we have a few colleagues who are still online and still typing away and answering questions that might be specific to you. So we're going to make sure that we wrap up. By the time we wrap up, we'll answer everybody's questions. I think I might have seen a question about, oh, never mind, someone already got to it. So if there are any questions, Bryn, Amanda, Augustina, Anjali, if you guys have any questions that you want to address live, let me know. Otherwise, I can go over a few more resources that might be useful to our attendees. All right. I think everybody is still typing away and answering questions. So thank you to everyone for sending those questions over, and thanks for being patient and understanding while we take the time to get to everybody, because I know a lot of people are on right now. Right now, I'm going to just finish up by sharing a few helpful resources that I briefly mentioned at earlier points, but I want to reiterate now. So if you have questions, maybe later in the day, at night, if you're browsing CommonLit and working hard for your students, then you can send those questions to help@commonlit.org. I just sent that in the chat. So any questions, that could be technical questions or anything at all, you can send that to help. If you have questions about this webinar or just generally about CommonLit, you can send those to info@commonlit.org. And I'm putting that in the chat as well. If you have feedback on any of our features, any of our new features that you've seen, or any thoughts on features that you would like to see, or content you would like to see or love that's on our site already, then you can send that to feedback@commonlit.org. And then last but not least, if you have questions during working hours, normal school hours, then you can go to the bottom right-hand corner when you're logged in to CommonLit and click on this help button. That's going to bring up the ability for you to not only search for an FAQ article, but you can also click live chat, and that's going to bring up the option for you to speak with one of our support associates right here, right now, through a chat. So if you're free and able to speak to someone now, you can definitely take advantage of that chat option. If you're chatting with them and you have to step away, you can no longer continue the conversation, whatever it may be, those support associates are the exact same awesome people who are responding to emails that go to help@commonlit.org. So we're getting tons of inquiries and requests right now to help at CommonLit. So we have a lot of people working round the clock to try to get to those. But like I said, those great people who are answering questions on chat are the same ones answering questions at the help@commonlit.org email. So you can definitely get questions answered there, or another idea is checking out our FAQ page. So if you go to the bottom, I just went to the bottom of the screen I was on and clicked on FAQ, or you can search an FAQ article when you bring up this help option. But it'll take you to our FAQ page where you can type in or search for any sort of question that you may have. So even if I just type in the word passwords, it's going to bring up 28 possible support articles that could help me. So we have fielded a lot of questions over the years since we first started. So a lot of the time we'll create a support article because we know that this is something important to you and that you need help with. So definitely check the FAQ page if you have any questions. Very likely answers are going to be there, but if you can't find the answer there, definitely reach out to us and we will find an answer for you.
Hey, Aubrey, just jumping in. We're getting a few questions again regarding Google Classroom. So I quickly wanted to go back over how our Google Classroom integration works. First, to explain the difference between our class code class system and Google Classroom setup. If you use Google Classroom with your students, all you have to do is import your Google Classroom class to CommonLit in order for them to be set up with accounts. Once your students are set up with CommonLit accounts, since it's through Google Classroom, all they need to do is click the Login with Google button on CommonLit to access their account. They do not need to have a separate password on CommonLit. Aubrey, on the screen, could you quickly show our login page so we could show them where that Login with Google button is? Thanks so much. And then also I've seen several questions regarding, there we go, up at the left-hand corner, there's the Login with Google button that your students will use to access CommonLit. So they do not need an additional password. And then to the questions we've been receiving regarding posting scores to Google Classroom, you have the option when you assign a lesson on CommonLit, whether you would like to post the scores that students receive on those CommonLit assignments to their gradebook on Google Classroom. So you are able to send those scores directly to Google. Hope that helps.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Bryn. And anybody else, if you have questions, feel free to jump in. The one thing I wanted to point out at the bottom here is our blog. So this is another really great resource where we've put together different helpful articles for you, and definitely topical ones at the moment. So if you're looking to do different things through CommonLit for your remote learning, we provide a lot of different suggestions for you and also just highlight different things that could be really useful to you in these different blog posts that we have. And then just generally, we have other blog posts like a collection of the passages that are put together on our featured content tab for the Women's History Month, and other things like focusing on different features on our site that you can use. So definitely check out our blog to see the different blog posts we have. That is another great resource. And we also have our YouTube page. So if you type in CommonLit on YouTube, you can find a ton of really helpful videos, not only links to past recordings of webinars, but you can also find how-to videos like the ones that I showed you for how to grade short answers, or anything else on our site that we have a how-to video for. We also have pre-reading videos. We have videos to go over CommonLit for students who are brand new to CommonLit to show how they can use it, and so much more. So definitely check out our YouTube page. And last but not least, we are on Twitter, we are on Facebook. Our handle is @CommonLit, which I can post in the chat right now, @CommonLit. It's just our name. But we love to hear from teachers, and we love to see how you are using CommonLit, especially during a time like this when you're using it for remote learning or however you're using it. We'll want to hear about it. And we know that it's really great for other teachers to hear how you're using us too. So you guys can work together and brainstorm creative, fun things to do for your students right now. And like I said, we're definitely updating new blog posts all the time, thinking of different ways that we can help you and highlighting different areas for you for CommonLit. So we're thinking too, but we love to hear how you're using us as well. So definitely check us out on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, look at our blog, look at our FAQ page. We have all the things for you, or you can always reach out to us if you have a question. With that, I'm just going to stop sharing my screen and see if we have any final questions. I know we're 15 minutes past, but feel free to send any final thoughts, questions, and we'll try to get to those before we're completely signing off.
Yeah, just one more note, just to reiterate one more time, you will be getting an email in the next few days, hopefully, with a recording of the entire webinar. And you'll receive some really relevant links that we've been sharing out a few times in that email as well. So just be sure to look out for that email, but don't expect it like right away. That's all.
Awesome. Thanks, Amanda. I'll turn my camera on to say goodbye. But yeah, as Amanda was saying, you will be receiving a follow-up email that it'll include helpful resources as well as the link to the recording of this webinar. We do have links to other similar webinars on YouTube right now. So if you really are eager to see what you missed if you joined late, you can check it out because we go over a lot of the same material, though we answer different questions sometimes. So definitely check that out. And yeah, if you don't end up getting the email in the next day or so, you can reach out to info@CommonLit. I'm usually the one who responds to that, so I'll know what you're talking about with the webinar, and I'll try to figure out why you're not getting it. It might be that it goes to your spam folder. It might be that the email that you registered for the webinar with is not the one that you're checking. So whatever it may be, I'll help troubleshoot that for you, but you will be getting it if you attended this webinar. And that can serve as a proof of attendance for you. We don't do certificates of attendance, but that email only goes to people who attended. So if you needed some sort of proof, then that would be your proof of attendance. Okay, so I think we are nearing the end of the questions. Again, feel free, if you have any other questions, to reach out to help@commonlit.org. Use our chat function. Send emails to any of the email addresses I provided in the chat. But thank you so much for attending. Thank you so much for everything that you're doing right now. I know that it's really stressful. I know that it's really unclear what the future holds for us, but please know that we're always going to be here. We're always wanting to support you as much as possible. And you can always rely on CommonLit for your digital remote learning. Like I said before, everything that we showed you here today was completely free. That's never going to change. And we really stand by that. Most of our organization is former teachers, so we know what you're going through and how difficult and challenging it can be sometimes, but we want to try to make it as easy for you as possible. So thanks again. Thanks for using CommonLit. And if you have any other questions, shoot them our way, but we will be signing off in a couple minutes once